Unless you've been living under a rock, you've probably heard of the Buddha. Not just as the founder of Buddhism, but as a symbol of extraordinary wisdom, compassion, and liberation. More than 2,500 years ago in ancient India, his teaching offered something simple, but revolutionary. A path out of suffering, and toward a peace that doesn't depend on luck. And here's the part that still blows people's minds today. Hi, I'm Ben. Today let's learn about the life of the Buddha. His life story wasn't born in a monastery. It started in a palace. A prince surrounded by comfort, beauty, protection. Yet somehow, still haunted by a question that luxury couldn't answer. So today, let's walk through the most fascinating stories of his life. From his mysterious birth, to the moment he left everything behind, to the night he faced temptation, fear, and the collapse of illusion itself. Take a breath. And let's begin. If you want to understand a great figure, you don't start with their fame. You start with their beginning. We travel back to around the 6th century BCE. To a place called Lumbini, a garden region in what is now modern-day Nepal. This is where Siddhartha Gautama was born. The child who would one day become the Buddha. He was the first son of King Siddhartha, ruler of the Sakya clan, and Queen Maya. But the stories around his birth are not ordinary. According to Buddhist tradition, Queen Maya had a dream. Not a normal dream. A dream so vivid, so symbolic, that when she woke up, she felt not frightened, but strangely calm. Like her body had been blessed with light. In the dream, celestial beings appear. She is guided to a sacred lake, bathed, dressed in heavenly robes, adorned with flowers and fragrance. And then comes the image that echoes through Buddhist art to this day. A white elephant, said to have 6 tusks, descends from above, holding a white lotus, and it enters her right side. Now if you're thinking, this is either deeply spiritual or the strangest pregnancy announcement in history, you're not alone. But in the symbolic language of ancient India, this dream meant one thing. A great being was coming. The king, hearing this, did what kings always do when the universe sends a weird message. He called the experts. Tradition says he invited dozens of Brahmin sages and seers to interpret the dream. And their conclusion was terrifying and glorious. They told him, your son will become one of 2 things. Either a great universal ruler, a wheel-turning king, the highest worldly power, or a fully awakened sage, a being beyond worldly power entirely. For a king, that second option is not a compliment. It's basically the universe saying, congrats on the baby, he might quit your kingdom. Time passes. And when Queen Maya nears childbirth, she follows the custom of returning to her parents' home. A grand procession leaves the capital, moving through forest roads and fragrant gardens. And on the way, they pass the Lumbini Grove again, a peaceful place shaded by sal trees. Queen Maya asks to stop and rest. And then, it happens. She goes into labor. Right there in the garden. Not in a palace. Not in a royal chamber. Not under gold ceilings. In nature. In simplicity. And Siddhartha is born. Tradition says the moment he entered the world, there were signs, unusual marks, radiant presence. What texts call the 32 marks of a great being. And then comes the most famous scene. The newborn takes 7 steps. 7. Each step, a lotus blooms under his feet. He raises one hand toward the sky, one hand toward the earth, and declares a line that's echoed for centuries. Not as arrogance, but as a cosmic announcement. This awakening is unique. And this world is shaped by aging, sickness, and death. In other words, suffering is real. And someone has arrived. Who will point the way through it? Soon after the birth, another figure enters the story. A seer named Asita. He looks at the child, studies his signs, and confirms the prophecy. This boy will become either a great king or an enlightened one. The king is relieved. But then Asita begins to cry. The king panics. Because when a holy man starts crying at your baby shower, that's rarely a good sign. So the king asks, "Why are you crying?" Asita answers gently, "I cry because I will not live long enough to hear him teach." In other words, his enlightenment is certain, but I won't be here to witness it. And King Suddhodana hears what he didn't want to hear. My son will not stay a prince. And then tragedy strikes. Not long after Siddhartha's birth, Queen Maya dies. Some traditions explain this as part of a sacred pattern. Others offer a human explanation. Childbirth complications were common in the ancient world. Either way, the story turns toward impermanence immediately. Even the most extraordinary life begins with loss. Siddhartha is then raised by his aunt, Mahapajapati, who becomes his foster mother. She cares for him with deep love. And later, she will become the first woman to request ordination into the Buddhist monastic community. A historic turning point. Siddhartha grows inside the palace world. Protected, sheltered, surrounded by refinement. The king does everything possible to keep suffering far away from his son's eyes. He doesn't want Siddhartha to see aging, disease, death, or spiritual renunciation. Because the prophecy says, if he sees those things, the prince will leave. And the king wants a ruler, not a monk. So Siddhartha lives behind beauty, art, luxury. Almost like a perfect dream. But there's a problem with perfect dreams. Eventually, they feel unreal. And the mind begins to suffocate. Siddhartha becomes curious. He wants to see beyond the walls. Even after he marries to Princess Yasodhara, the inner restlessness doesn't disappear. He has comfort. He has status. He has everything society tells you should equal happiness. But inside, he feels a haunting emptiness. Like the whole palace is a beautiful cage. And the more the king tries to entertain him, the more Siddhartha's me. The four sights. On separate outings outside the palace, Siddhartha sees an old man, a sick person, a dead body, and finally, a wandering ascetic. A person who has renounced worldly life to seek truth. And in that moment, his protected world collapses. He realizes, if aging is unavoidable, if sickness can strike anyone, if death comes for all, then no amount of luxury can protect you. Not forever. And the calm ascetic becomes a symbol of another possibility. A life devoted to understanding suffering, instead of running from it. Not long after, Siddhartha's son is born. And here's one of the most human, complicated details. He names the child Rahula, often interpreted as bond, fetter, or obstacle. Not because he hates the baby, but because he recognizes the emotional truth. Love ties you to the world, and leaving will hurt, which makes the choice even heavier. One night, he decides. He silently walks through the palace. He looks at his sleeping wife. He looks at his newborn son. He feels the weight of love, and still chooses the path of renunciation. This is not coldness. This is sacrifice. He calls his loyal charioteer, takes his horse, and leaves into the dark. The great departure. At the riverbank, he cuts his hair, removes his royal ornaments, and sends them back. The prince disappears. A seeker begins. Siddhartha studies under renowned meditation masters. He reaches extremely high states of concentration. States that many people would consider spiritual success. But he realizes, even the highest blissful trance does not permanently end suffering. It still fades. It still depends on conditions. So he moves on. He tries extreme austerity, a harsh practice of near starvation and self-denial, for years, until his body becomes so weak, he nearly dies. And then comes the breakthrough. Suffering cannot be ended. Through more suffering. Pain is not the cure for pain. He realizes the middle way. A path between indulgence and self-torture. Balanced. Clear. Sustainable. And this is where the story turns toward awakening. Near the Naranjana River, two young women offer him milk rice. He accepts. Not as indulgence, but as nourishment. And something changes. His strength returns. His mind becomes steady. He walks to Bodh Gaya and sits beneath the Bodhi Tree. And he makes a vow. I will not rise from this seat until I discover the truth. That night, tradition says, Mara appears. The personification of temptation, fear, distraction, ego. Mara attacks him with armies. Then with seductive visions. Then with doubt. Who do you think you are? But Siddhartha does not fight with anger. He doesn't panic. He doesn't bargain. He simply remains still. And in that stillness, Mara loses power. Because temptation only works when the mind runs. When the mind is steady, illusion collapses. As the night deepens, Siddhartha enters profound insight. He sees the patterns of existence. How craving fuels suffering. How ignorance fuels craving. How actions create consequences. And at dawn, he awakens. Not as a prince. Not as a scholar. But as the Buddha. The fully enlightened one. A being who understands suffering. Its cause. Its ending. And the path that leads beyond it. After awakening, the Buddha hesitates to teach. He thinks. This truth is subtle. It's beyond ordinary thinking. People might misunderstand it. They might mock it. They might twist it. So he remains silent. Until a divine figure, Brahma, pleads. Teach. Because some beings have little dust in their eyes. Some are ready. And the Buddha agrees. Out of compassion. Not to create a religion, but to offer a way out. He travels to meet his 5 former companions. They're practicing in the deer park at Sarnath. They see him approach. And at first, they judge him. He stopped austerity. He must have failed. But when he gets closer, they sense something different. His presence is calm, clear, unshakable. And then he gives his first teaching. The turning of the wheel of Dharma. He teaches the middle way. The 4 noble truths. And the 8-fold path. And from that moment on, the Buddha spends the rest of his life. 45 years. Walking, teaching, guiding, healing. Not with miracles, but with clarity. And here is the final point. The Buddha's story is not meant to make you worship him. It's meant to remind you. A human mind can wake up. A human heart can become free. And a life can be transformed. Not by escaping reality, but by seeing it clearly. If you want. In the next video we can explore the most dramatic redemption story in Buddhist tradition. Angulimala, the feared killer who was transformed by compassion. Because sometimes, the darkest karma doesn't end in darkness. Sometimes it becomes the doorway to awakening. If this video moved you, stay with me. My name is Benjamin. And here we explore mindfulness, compassion, and the path of inner freedom. One story at a time.